I got an email in last week from someone asking me whether or not they should tell their listeners that they had made a mistake on their show. Now, granted, this mistake wasn't a huge thing, but this person reached out and said to me, Marco, I've got no idea what to do. I feel a little bit silly and I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And I said, of course I'll help. Of course I can. I sent an email back and promised that I'd record an episode about it. So here it is. Should you tell your audience if you make a mistake on or with your podcast? We're going to dig into that here today on the Podcast Accelerator. I almost attempted to do that in Spanish. I've been learning Spanish during lockdown, and as I came to do that and say that in Spanish, I realised that I had no idea what that meant, and thus my learning of Spanish was evidently not very good. So keep tabs on that one. Maybe we'll start getting into that. I could do a Spanish-speaking version. I would be terrible at that. But anyway, I digress. This is the Podcast Accelerator. I'm your host, Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media, where we make podcast ecosystem products. We help you to grow your audience with our podcast hosting, analytics and marketing platform, Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host, where, of course, you can get 7 days on us of free podcast hosting at Captivate.fm. Also, we run free coaching every single week, every week. Without fail, we run free podcast coaching for 30 minutes every Friday, 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, over on our free and open Facebook group. No email address required, and you can get that every single week at rebelbasemedia.io/free coaching. Now, before I get to the content, I need to give a quick shout out to AWeber as well, the email marketing team that helps me to stay in contact with all of my listeners, and of course, where I receive emails like the one that prompted today's episode. So please go and check out AWeber for your email marketing. They're a fantastic company, a fantastic set of people. They've just gone remote first due to the lockdown, which I think is a very admirable, very wise move, and it just shows the agility and the ability that AWeber has to remain present and obviously current in the world. So please go and check them out, markasquith.com/AWeber. So we all make mistakes, and as podcasters, it's important to communicate when something goes wrong because we're a very, very personal medium. So one of my listeners, like I said, asked me how to handle this today. The context was that, like I said, they'd done something a little bit off on their podcast. They'd got something slightly wrong in the way that they'd presented their information. And they said, Marco, I feel a little bit bad about this. What should I do? And it got me thinking, about how I would handle this. And we all make mistakes. I've made mistakes in podcasting, in business, made mistakes in life in general. I certainly make mistakes every time I go and play golf, and absolutely when I do my Duolingo Spanish practice. And the point is that there are varying levels of mistake. However, as a general mindset and as a general approach to life, I always think it's best to open up, to address those mistakes and learn from them. And I know that's a very cliched and very trite thing to say, but I mean it. You have to live by it. And as a leader in business, as a leader in podcasting, you have to understand that, people look to you for advice and help. So if you don't admit your mistakes and if you don't look at them, it can really translate badly for everything that you do in the future. So if you're a podcaster and you have made this mistake, so for the listener and the podcaster that wrote in with this issue, I think the thing that you have to understand is that your listener, is a person. It's not listeners, plural. Yes, everyone is part of a group of listeners, but ultimately, because podcasting is such a personal medium, arguably the most personal medium on the planet. YouTube arguably is up there in video content because you can see, the eyes of the people that you're talking to. But I would posit that podcasting is even more personal because you're directly piped into the ears at many more intimate times throughout a podcast listener's day. And because of that, everything that podcasters do is centered around their brand. Every way that you communicate, every decision that you make about communication is very much just setting the scene for how you handle things and how you build your brand and how you interact with your audience and ultimately how you then build your products and so on and so forth. Captivate as an example for what we do internally. Captivate would not have succeeded and grown as quickly as it has done had we not had the background in podcast websites and spent time building trust and relationships and letting people know that we're genuine people. Nor would it have succeeded had I not had the Podcast Accelerator podcast or the previous 7-Minute Mentor podcast talking about podcasting. And these are all brand touch points. So when you make a mistake and you don't address it, what you're actually doing is you're actually spending a bit of your brand equity, all right? You're letting brand equity out of the bank. You're spending that, and it's a waste of a spend, because what you're doing is you're giving away some of that brand equity to either to competitors, or just eroding the trust a little bit with people who listen to your show. And, it's very easy for people in podcasting, or the entrepreneurial space in particular, which is where this person comes from, to put across this fake sense of authenticity. I see entrepreneurs do it every day. Most entrepreneurs are full of crap. They are not doing what they say they are doing online. They are not living how they say they are doing. I know many, many online entrepreneurs that will try and sell you all sorts of stuff and say that they get up and they do a big ass morning routine. And, I know these people, I've spoken to them and I've spent time with them and I've seen their morning routines, and it ain't that. All right. So what you have to understand is that is another spend of your brand equity. You have to be honest with people, and faking authenticity, it comes out in the wash, all right? So if you are saying that you're authentic and that you're willing to share your mistakes, but actually you're not really owning them, that's not something that you can really expect to scale. You are going to erode your brand, and every time someone sees a little crack in that armor, they're going to see that you've spent a little of that brand equity, and what will happen is that you'll start to lose people. You will start to lose people. So what should you do if you make a mistake in your podcast? Well, you should take all of that to heart that I've just said. And what you should do is you should address it head on. You should record a specific episode, a very short bonus episode about it. Or if you have a long form podcast, what you should do is you should, at the beginning, not at the end, where no one listens, at the beginning, you should bring it up, you should address it, and here's how you address it. You explain why it went wrong. You explain your original intent, what you were trying to achieve, and you explain exactly what went wrong, why it went wrong, and where it went wrong, and you rectify it by actually giving them the facts, the truth of the matter. You give them the solution. Okay, so that is the way that you handle this, and you need to be very, very forthcoming, and you need to own it. Now, if you do that, you don't spend brand equity. Instead, you build brand equity, because people see that you are a human, and people see that you can absolutely get involved on this, and you can absolutely be a person that they can relate to, all right? And if you do that, that is the key to long-term success. I see so many podcasters, so many online entrepreneurs who have a flash in the pan few years, and what happens is their revenue starts to fade, their revenue starts to stagnate, it starts to become very plateau, and they start to do things that don't fit their brand, whether that's just becoming an ultimate affiliate for everyone and not really creating anything themselves, whether that's changing the content up and doing a lot more sponsored content on their podcast. Whatever it is, we see this pattern very, very often. I've seen it in the agency world, I've seen it in the entrepreneurial world, I've seen it in the local business world, and of course I've seen it now in the podcasting world over the last 7 years. So take your mistakes, own up to them. You are a human being. No one's infallible, all right? And no one will judge you for getting something wrong as long as you own it, all right? And that is how you approach a mistake in your podcast, all right? So until the next time, I'll see you on the free coaching, 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, and 8 a.m. Pacific, over on Facebook, rebelbasemedia.io/free coaching every single week, every single Friday. And never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.